Good morning, everybody. Excited to be at AGS NYC. Been connecting with a lot of you guys on LinkedIn as well at the event. We got Dan, Connor, DK, Nicole, a bunch of you guys here. And it's incredible to see what you guys are working on is your apps and projects. We're going to be sharing about privacy and data. I think it's a fun topic because it's important, and I think a lot of us like to make money and not waste money on fees. So we're going to jump right into that today. We're going to contrast really the US and Europe because there's two things going on there, but you might be surprised on some of the different things that are actually happening and how it applies to your business and mobile app onboarding. So today I am joined by Jérôme. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone.
He's come all the way in from Paris, so he is doing
a little bit tired.
A great job with the jet lag, but seeing around this beautiful city, New York, some of you guys that live here, you're so blessed to live here. It's an amazing city. And really what we do at Axeptio is we're a consent management platform for mobile apps and web consent. Most of those are working in tandem, right? If you have an app, you have a landing page as well that you're driving traffic to. And if you're not using a consent management platform like ours, which in layman's term is what, Jérôme? Let's ask our icebreaker question.
Yeah, so we have two questions for icebreaking. The first one, please raise your hand if you have ever seen a cookie banner or privacy notice on a website, specifically website. Okay. So the next question is...
You notice how happy they all are about that too?
Yeah, I'm setting the energy of the room. And the second question is about app, but I will not ask about Apple ATT. So have you ever seen some kind of privacy notice or cookie banners within a mobile app? So less people have seen such experience. So that's the topic of today is what mobile app owners need to know about privacy notice.
Yeah, so what we want to talk about today is basically a 101. What's the best practices? We went ahead before this event and tried to find you guys the best research and things that are going on so that way you guys are up to date and informed. Because the whole point is that it's an evolving landscape. It's constantly changing. And a lot of you guys in technology space, I don't have to tell you that. We're always continuing to learn new things, and mobile app owners also need to know this. And so we're going to dive into it today. So here we're looking at the US. Global map here. We'll start with the global. In the purple color that you see 71% of countries have passed legislation. That means there's actual laws on the books for privacy. What that means for you is that your brand could be liable. We don't want to do any fear tactics here. It's just a part of doing good business is really looking over these. And if you're looking at the US, there's actually 9% of states, and Jérôme will jump more into this in detail, that have drafted legislation, like on the books in the US. So partly on what I've done in my career is built a lot of websites. I've never wanted to build a website where my client was compliant or basically liable for something that I've built. And so when you look at even in the US, I didn't know that. Unless my client was doing business in the EU, it was something like an afterthought. Now it's becoming more center stage. And 15% of countries around the globe, they have no legislation on the books. They don't have anything really going on yet. And 5% have no data policies at all. The point we want to show here is that it's expanding worldwide, and it's going to continue to expand as a lot of these different states unfold, and Jérôme will share about that as well. Okay, so not only are all these different places rolling out laws, they're getting called out. They're getting called out by the courts. They're getting called out by media. And I'm not going to read all the brands there, but you can see them. These guys are in the news. We don't want our apps up there, our businesses up there, but it is a part of what we really need to do to protect our customers' data. So we have the FTC broadening health, HIPAA, all the different policies that exist there. So each one of these, you can go down really a rabbit trail on all of the things that you need to do. Jérôme, would you tell us a little bit about what's happening in our neck of the woods?
Yeah, so as you have seen in the first map, the US is different than the other countries. In the US, you have US state regulation, and in 2020, California started, and now you have 19 states with legislation that are in place. Just for this year, 8 states have deployed data protection regulation at state level in January. So it's evolving a lot also in the US. The bad news is that it's a very complex patchwork, There will be new discussion at the federal level for example, in the digital advertising market in order to give a consistent approach to this different US state regulation. If we look at the opposite in Europe, we do not have such, please next slide, we do not have such patchwork. We have a unified framework named GDPR, and if you are operating in Europe, so Peloton, for example, told a few minutes ago that they are active in Europe in certain countries, so they are affected by the GDPR. So if you have a bunch of users in Europe, you need to be compliant. I will not give too much detail about GDPR because it's super complex. We can have a full day conference about that, but I would like to emphasize what is very important is that the GDPR is blocking any data collection without user consent. So when a user is opening an app, if you want to be compliant, no data can be collected until you display something, and that's the next slide. So that's the reason of the existence of CMP. So when the user is interacting with a CMP, he need to give his consent to all trackers. So there are 4 main principles, and the next slide. 4 main principles regarding CMP. The first one is that all trackers must be visible. That means that in Europe, any app owners has to list all the trackers or all the SDK that are active within an app. For each tracker, the app publisher has to display the legal purposes in order to make the end user aware of what's going on with his data. The third point is that the CMP should display 3 different buttons: accept, decline, and choose button. And what is important, no dark pattern can be visible on the screen. That means that you cannot highlight one button instead of another button. And the last part is that any change should be, the end user could change his mind at any time. And that is also super important.
Okay, so we're calling this the rise of consent flow. I mean, I think everybody with apps, Zen, yoga, whatever you're doing in life, we want it to flow well. We want to have a good state for our users. It's the first impression that you have. So the functionality, the way that it looks, the way that it feels for your user, this is where we believe consent flow will become more important, and it's really a touch point for your brand to make an impression. And so how it starts, the pillar of consent flow, whenever you have someone signing up, you have something like Axeptio. Here's an example of our app. It's totally customizable to your language, to your brand colors, everything. Has the great core web vitals behind it. You don't have to maintenance it. You don't have to build it. You can duplicate, put it in any region, any language that you need to automatically. That's the first step before your customer is even getting to your main offering. Then you have the Apple transparency tracking. Basically, we're all going through and clicking approve or deny, and we don't know what's going on with our data most of the time. What we want to resolve is really help people understand what they're opting into so that they will share their data so you can make their experience better. And then we get into the technical authorizations. You have notifications, you have cameras, you have sensor, you have geolocations, you have local networks, you have contacts, on and on. So having these all together, the flow of where you start to finish is so important. And you can do this on your own app, re-downloading it, testing it in different geolocations. Me and Jérôme, we were doing that for weeks, just seeing all these different apps and how they function in one location like the US and completely different in Europe.
And what is important is that Apple ATT is not a CMP and it's not GDPR compliant. Remember the 4 principles I mentioned a couple of seconds before? So on Apple ATT framework, you don't have the list of the trackers. You don't have the legal purpose. The constraint regarding the sentence is super high, so you cannot explain to the end user what's going on. And there is no choose button. You have yes, ask app not to track, or allow. You don't have a choose button. Obviously, the end user can change his mind in the iOS settings. So there are some countries in Europe that have launched complaints against Apple, especially in France, Germany, Italy, and also Poland. So maybe Apple ATT will not be legal in Europe in a few weeks. And for apps that have no CMP, there is a first issue is that now the national data protection bodies in Europe are looking at mobile apps. So for example, in France, Voodoo, which is a very famous hyper-casual gaming studio, they got a €3 million fine in 23 because they were not displaying any CMP at all. In the UK, so that's not only in EU, but also in the UK, the ICO, so the local data protection body, have sent a strong message at the beginning of 24. ICO urges all app developers to prioritize privacy. In the UK, women health, fertility apps are under the spotlight. So that's the legal radar. And the second one, which is the new trend in 24, is that Google is embracing the consent approach in Europe. Why? Because due to the new European Digital Market Act, Google is trying to be compliant with its own way. So they invented a technical framework named Google Consent Mode, and that's the second iteration. So it's the Google Consent Mode V2, and they are sending strong messages to European websites and to European mobile apps. So if people are using Google Ads or Google Analytics, and if they are not using Google Consent Mode V2, Google is saying to the market, guys, your data available on Google Ads or Google Analytics dashboard are no more accurate. So consent is not only a legal topic, it's now a business topic due to this Google initiative. And for your information, Google has certified 25 CMP that are allowed to be the official list of partners of Google.
Yeah, and just to add on top of that, as you're running your ads, you're doing user acquisition, you're looking at, okay, I actually have consent, but now if you don't have consent mode 2 via Google, which is certified, and shout out to Axeptio, we're Google certified, gold standard, which not every consent platform is, and that's something that really want to highlight.
So let's go to the final part.
Okay, so Jerome's going to walk us through some show and tell. He's going to show us a couple different apps, both through videos and showing the CMP. So Jerome, would you go ahead and walk us through that?
So we will start with two European examples. So the first one is the Skyscanner app. So on the left part of the slide, you are seeing what's going on a US IP address. And on the right part of the slide, you are seeing what's going on a French IP address. So you see that the first screen that is displayed to the end user in the US and in Europe is a CMP. For your information, there are 3 buttons on the right part and only 2 buttons. So they are strictly compliant to GDPR for a French user. But for a US user, they are trying to play with the rules. If we look at the second example, which is The Economist, on the next slide, The Economist. The Economist, they are also displaying a CMP on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, so US and France. But you can see that in the US, they are using a dark pattern. They have a continue blue button. You don't have any decline button, and you have a manage button with another color. On the French examples, on the right part of the slide, you can see that the reject all and the accept all button have the same size and the same color. Now we are going to videos.
And a quick note on that, though, is something that I had no idea about until we were putting this together, is that to be GDPR compliant, the button colors have to be the same. They have to be equal weighted because a lot of us with marketing, we're putting an active color because that's what we want folks to click. With GDPR, they have to be the same color. I was so blown away by that, but that's for you app designers out there.
Let's go to US example. So let's start by Open Table, and let's go to the second video. I don't know if people, please click Blake.
Yeah, let's start it.
So Open Table on a US IP address, you will see no CMP, ATT, and Blake is opening the app, and now we are switching to the. So this is on the right. This is a CMP. So Open Table, as a US company, is compliant to GDPR for a European user. So they are displaying a CMP to their European user base. So, and then you have ATT. Let's go to the next slide.
Well, and I'm just curious, how many people used Open Table while in New York? By show of hands. Nice. Awesome.
And
so
next one is Twitch. So I don't know if we can just go to the second video, not the first one.
First one's going. The
Yeah.
second one is also going.
So look at the right part. Here you have a CMP, so it's Twitch. Subsidiary. You have a CMP listing all the trackers from branch to, it's too fast. You have a lot of legal text. So this is a pure CMP displayed by Twitch. If you open Audible in Europe, you will have the same experience. So Amazon is compliant to GDPR for its European user base, which is super interesting. And so they have two flows based on geolocation. And the next and final slide is NBC, which is super interesting, the NBC News example, because it's one of the only app that will say thank you to the end user. So not only to get the consent, but also, and they have a thank you also for the push notification. So for ATT, when I'm saying yes to ATT, they are saying thank you to the end user, and that's the same also for push notification. And we can go to the next and final slide in order to get the conclusion.
Okay, so in wrapping up, CMP, Consent Management Platform, is the new kid on the block. It's a part of your flows. It's going to be a part of your business. It's going to protect your business. And it's also going to allow you to have an unlock for your data that you're going to be able to track with having this. A few different points we want to share with you. Privacy is going to continue to change. We're always continuing to learn about technology, but make privacy regulations something about your business to meet with your team quarterly and really see what's happening on the ground where you're doing business and where your users are using the app, because it's also affected that way. Number two, app onboarding is impacted, as you guys have seen through the flow, and is only going to get more complex, which we don't want friction for any users, any customers. We don't want it ourselves when using any kind of tool. And number three is design great consent experiences for your business. Showing your customer transparency builds brand authority, gives you credibility, and they're going to trust you in the future with their business. And the last point is consent collection, as you've seen, is a marketing moment. So as you saw with NBC News, they showed you thank you at the end. Say, hey, thanks for sharing your data, because we really don't want to share our data anymore. I mean, there's probably a lot of you in the room that have apps that block folks from using your data. So getting good consent, making it a marketing moment to introduce your brand can go a long way.
If we have questions, do not hesitate to raise your hand, please. Yeah. Sorry, to have? What do you mean by radio button?
Like a circle you click into.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be a good idea, yeah. Yeah. Exactly. The philosophy of all this regulation is to avoid to create a bias for the end user. So if all options are available with the same approach, that's okay from a regulator point of view.
So Jérôme, it couldn't be pre-selected. The radio button couldn't be pre-selected, whatever color. I think that's your point too, is like have it where they can toggle it. Has to be no selection and then they select.
We have another question. And web. So you have two options. The first option is to list all the tracker of the website on your website, and the same for the apps, and to have two moments to get the user consent. Or you can decide to avoid consent fatigue. So you will list all the web trackers and all the app trackers, and so you will have a match between the consent and your customer or user ID. So when an end user is logging, so let's say that the end user is giving its consent on the web, and then he is opening the app and is logging on the app, you will not display the consent screen on the app because you have already collected the consent. So you can avoid consent fatigue by this mechanism, and that's compliant. Yeah. Question?
Good over here, then we got someone in the back.
So on the market today, on the CMP market, let's say that 95% of CMP players are not selling data. You have only some 5% of the market that are implemented free CMP in exchange of data collection and monetization. That's not our choice. So we are a SaaS platform. So people that are working for us, for example, the International Federation of Basketball, which is our largest customer, is paying us money, and we are collecting the consent. So we are a subcontractor from a legal point of view. So we are collecting the consent, and we are storing the consent of the International Federation of Basketball on our servers. So we are a subcontractor. Yeah, we have a token. Well, we have our own token.
Yeah, there's a token in the back end, and actually something that's important about that too is when you have a CMP like this, there's a log that you can go back into. So it keeps you above reproach, right? So when someone approaches you and says, hey, you're using a CMP, is it working? It's actually logged there as a token. But I think a caveat to your question too would be, we have like 100 integrations. So maybe where you're sending that data to, they might be doing different things with the data, and that's where you'd have to sort that decision out with your team. Yeah. We had one more question, I think, right over here. She was waiting. Yep.
Hi, thank you. I think in an ever-changing privacy market, it's a great product that you're building, and I think a problem that's going to continue to be bigger and bigger and bigger. So I hope you have a lot of success, continued success. My question is around, especially in a cross-platform type solution, determining what type of consent you need in order to be compliant. Is that based on the user's IP, or somebody's coming from web and then maybe they have a different localization set on their app store? So is it based on the app store localization, or people are traveling? I mean, it starts to become very complex in terms of what is considered being in compliance for a citizen from France, but they download an app from the US App Store, or how are you handling that challenge?
We have automatic geolocation that is available within our platform. And as I said in the previous question, let's say that 80% of the website and mobile apps that are using CMP have logged users or customers. So the issue you mentioned is mainly for anonymous users. If you have two devices and you are an anonymous visitor of a website or anonymous user of a mobile app, you will get two CMP. So on your laptop, you will get a first consent experience. On your mobile device, for example, for a mobile website, you will get another CMP. So in Europe, when people are seeing all the time CMP on all websites and on a large number of mobile apps, we have this consent fatigue phenomena. And so just to sum up, on average, 70% of end users in Europe are saying yes, yes, yes when they are seeing a CMP. 30% are saying no, no, no every time. And you have only less than 1%, let's say 0.5%, that are going into the setting and that are changing and say, okay, I don't want to be tracked by TikTok because I don't want to send my data to the Chinese Communist Party, but I want to be tracked by a US company or by a European company. So 70% yes all the time, 30% no all the time, and 0.5% are the capacity to change at the granular level of each tracker. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, that's all we have for time. Please connect with our team. Gilliam, there in the back, is on our sales team. Would love to chat with you about your product. We purposely didn't jump into the product because we want to talk to you guys afterwards about that. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you.